I try to keep all my promises. I also promised yesterday that we would talk about the role of the teacher. Something that's very, very important, but often insufficiently clear in our minds. In fact, we did begin to talk about this yesterday when we talked about how to regard the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha as our sources of refuge. We talked about the Buddha as the teacher and prime example of someone who has actually accomplished the results of this path of training and therefore worth relying upon in a very pragmatic or practical way. In the common or general vehicle of Buddha Dharma, the image that is most commonly used to describe the Buddha is that of the skilled physician, and the Dharma as the course of treatment to treat the illness, which is the confusion, ignorance, and disturbance within our own minds. We being the sick people. So the physician, the illness, and the cure, that's the image in the general vehicle. So just like you would be foolhardy to ignore the advice of the world's most skilled physician in treating your particular illness, you should place the same level of trust or confidence in the cures prescribed by the Buddha, who actually has recovered from the same illness from which you suffer. That's the general model. Then in the Mahayana, the great vehicle, the teacher is more like the mentor or advisor, the spiritual friend, the Kalyana Mitra, the Gewei Shenyan, which in Tibetan is contracted to Geshe. So in the Gelugpa lineage, they use this title a lot, Geshe. It's an honorific or term of respect for a lama. And again, very straightforward model. In the Vajrayana, as always, things get both much more simple and much more complicated. Now we open up a very big can because there are many different roles and many different descriptions of who the teacher is to us. In Sanskrit, they said guru. In Tibetan, they translate that as lama. Lama being the one with superior qualities, with a tenderness and concern for us, like a loving mother. That's what the word means. But this lama has very profound meanings throughout Buddha Dharma. Like in the treasure of Maitreya, received by a Sangha, called the Ju Lama, the highest continuum. Or in Jigme Lingpa's explanation of how to practice Dzogchen, the Yeshe Lama, the Lama of wisdom, the highest wisdom. Or in Tulku Rinpoche's book on the preliminary practices, called Kunzang Lame Shalom, the prescriptions or teachings of my precious perfect teacher. So the Lama, that term is very, very important in Tibetan Buddhism. There is the Lama who is the Vajracharya or the Vajra master, the one who initiates us into a particular cycle of yoga practice, development stage yoga practice, introduces us to the mandala of a deity that we will then rely upon as a support in practice, and who gives us both that ripening empowerment and the liberating instructions on how to put that into practice. That's one type of lama or one role that the guru plays. Then there's the preceptor, the one who gives perhaps monastic ordination vows or lay ordination vows, also a role for the teacher, and the Kempo both in the sense of preceptor and in the sense of the professor, the one who sits down and teaches us the inner meaning of the words of tantras and important treatises, explanations. of profound topics of Vajrayana or of the Mahayana in general. Now it gets more subtle. There is the teacher who is everything that happens to us. Because as we said before, once we are committed to the path and we know it's not really an option anymore to see our life and our practice as separate, as butting heads with each other, as life getting in the way of practice or vice versa, but we know anything that happens to us is an opportunity to apply the teachings and techniques we have learned. Then, of course, it follows that everything that happens to us can be a kind gift from the teacher to enable us to put that instruction into practice, right? In Vajrayana, we have that view. When we're sick, that's a teaching. When we're healthy, that's a teaching. When we're happy, that's a teaching. When we're unhappy, that's a teaching. Why? Because we choose to look at it that way. Why do we do that? Because in Vajrayana, we are now working with our own perceptions and mental projections as the material of practice, as the shortcut to actually transforming our experience and developing wisdom. And so we become willing to look at things differently because it's a good idea to do that. It's helpful. Going further, we talk about appearances, sounds, and thought movements as the natural display of the kayas or dimensions of the Guru's being. And I want to read something to you from one of my teachers, Chabje Kalu Rinpoche, which is the beginning of a Guru Yoga prayer that he wrote capturing this point. Again, my translation. Homage to the Guru. A display of interdependent forms in endless profusion. The Guru of symbolic display appears from outside. An unfolding magical pageantry beyond expression. I supplicate you within a state of naturally free, empty display. Grant your blessings that I realize this vibrant display to be Nirmanakaya. So the recognition of form as emptiness and emptiness as form is the recognition of the display of form as the Nirmanakaya dimension of enlightenment, as embodied by the being of our teacher. Likewise for Sambhogakaya and Dharmakaya. This is not easy stuff, I know that. Worth introducing. Various sounds and voices from unceasing causes and conditions. The Guru of audible mantra appears from in between. An inconceivable symphony of sweet chants and song. I supplicate you within a state of naturally free, empty sound. Grant your blessings that I realize this endless flow to be Sambhogakaya. Do you see the point here? Choosing to look at your experience of form and sound as expressions of the union of emptiness and form, the union of emptiness and sound, connects us to, allows us to realize more and more powerfully the three kaya nature of all phenomena that we can experience, all of which are embodied or represented by the person of our personal teacher. I'll stop there on that reading because we don't have that much time. So why have I said all this? There are different levels of practice, different yanas within Buddha Dharma. We've talked about some of them. The way we relate to our teacher should fit with the level at which we are practicing. It's not a mix and match kind of thing where you take one from column A and column B. So if you are practicing as a simple monk or nun in a Theravadan tradition, seeing your teacher as a crazy wisdom master and interacting in that way is going to get you into all kinds of trouble. Likewise, when you are introduced to the nature of mind by your Vajra master, that's another level of guru. In Vajrayana, it's called the root guru, or most fundamental guru, because That is the person who introduces us to what is most vital or important, the true nature of our own being, the root guru, another function, you can say, of the guru in Vajrayana. When you are relating to a teacher at that level as that which appears outside yourself and yet is merely an introduction to or reflection of your own innermost nature, then treating that person as a simple ordinary monk, human being, or nun, or yogi also doesn't work. In Vajrayana, because, as I said, everything is about working more skillfully with your perceptions and mental projections in one way or another, you get what you pay for. You get what you see. If everything that appears to us can be perceived as the Nangwa Dalai Lama, the symbolic guru of phenomenal display, then if we see the guru as a Buddha with the qualities of Buddha, as it said, equal in qualities to the Buddha, but superior to the Buddha in kindness, because our root guru actually appears before us in this life in a form that we can interact with in person, whereas we don't have that opportunity with the historical Buddha, nor do we have the purity of mind to experience the pure Sambhogakaya dimension. Like Asanga, when he was meditating on the Buddha Maitreya, it took him 12 years not to see Maitreya as a flea-infested dog, but to see him in his true form. So that takes a lot of work. So if we see the teacher as the reflection of our own true nature, or as the embodiment or instrument that points to that nature, then it can be that way. If we see them as just a kind and helpful human being, then that's what we'll get. If we see them as a person riddled with flaws and faults, again, we will only start getting ourselves into more and more trouble. But this is about our own choice and our own skillful exercise of these techniques of Vajrayana. It's not about anyone else making us see anything any particular way. Which is to say, it's not your teacher's job to manipulate your perceptions to make you see them as perfect. It's your job. Because it's the skillful means that you are applying in your own experience in order to realize something deeper, truer, and more profound. So what is the teacher's job? Do you mind if I keep going? Okay. What is the teacher's job? The teacher's job in general, in all of the Mahayana, is to practice at least what are called the Dua Namshi, or the 4 modes of attracting and serving disciples, such as being kind and generous towards them, giving them what they need, having the skill to offer the teachings that are actually suitable and applicable to the particular student to help them, to give them words of kind encouragement to support their practice, and perhaps most important of all, to be genuine and free of any kind of hypocrisy.